Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities designed to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. Our topic today will be the nuclear deal between the P5+1 countries, the United States, Britain, France, Russia, China, and Germany, and Iran. This is one of the most consequential arms control agreements that has been negotiated in the past 2 decades. And it's important that citizens understand its provisions and its implications. Congress is expected to vote on the accord in September. Here to help us sort through all of these issues is Nick Berry, who is the founder of the Foreign Policy Forum, which is a foreign policy website, and a former senior analyst at the Center for Defense Information, a one-time Washington think tank that specialized in foreign and national security issues and was headed by senior military officers. Nick, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, let's start by reviewing for our audience today the provisions of the nuclear accord and its agreement. Specifically, what does it contain that commits Iran to doing, specifically on the area of its nuclear program, and what does it require of the P5+1 nations in terms of the sanctions regime and its implementation?
Thank you, Mike. Let me first say that having this program on an issue that many of us in the foreign policy community think is extremely important, a cornerstone of Obama's foreign policy, but even more important for the country, an agreement that will shape a lot of future history, some of it very uncertain. Let me deal with, and not to leave anything out, I made a list. Let me talk about, first of all, what Iran has agreed to. In January, they signed the Joint Comprehensive Provisional Program of Agreement. The acronym is terrible, but there it is. Iran agreed to cap its enrichment at 3.67%. And that's very good for nuclear energy. It's not good for nuclear fissile weapons, which requires 90% plus enrichment of uranium. And they agreed to that for 10 to 15 years. And even after that, for 25 years, the International Atomic Energy Agency will have inspectors there to look at it. They've agreed to these intrusive inspections, and intrusive they are, probably the most intrusive of any nuclear agreement. Maybe there is an exception with Gaddafi in Libya, and South Africa. But there was almost nothing to inspect. And what there was to inspect was done thoroughly. If, in fact, the Iranians disagree with where the inspector should go, they have a 24-day window. And it's a little complex, and there are a lot of loose ends in this agreement. But it means that the IAEA, which is going to be doing the inspections, has to have good cause, and they have to present the cause to the Iranians. Now, the Iranians can say no. And why they objected in the future is any military establishment, that means the planning department of the military, no country allows foreigners in to see all their plans. I mean, that's absurd. But if there is a good cause and Iran backs out, there is a process to force them to allow inspectors in. And there's a vote by the parties. There's 8 of them that are involved in this, including representatives of the UN, and 5 out of the 8, of which the United States has 5 out of the 8, not including Russia, China, and Iran, can force these inspections. There was concern about Iraq, which is a heavy water reactor. Heavy water reactors bombard the fuel bombards the fuel itself to produce plutonium. Plutonium is used in an implosion weapon. Uranium in a gun type. I can go into that a little later. I, in fact, did some work on these weapons when I was in the military. That will not produce plutonium. The vessel for the plutonium will be filled with concrete, and whatever fuel comes out of that will be shipped abroad. They agreed to no conventional arms sales for 5 years and no missile sales in or out for 8 years. They have 19,000 centrifuges now. Some of them are very advanced. That will be limited to 6,600. That is a huge reduction. And their stockpile of uranium, of which they have a lot now. True, it's only enriched to a little less than 5%. They will be restricted to having only 300 kilograms of enriched uranium on hand. That's 660 pounds. Even if they refine that, that is not enough to produce a weapon. The underground site at Fordo, this is under a mountain. It's protected. The Iranians put it in thinking that an Israeli attack might occur and they could protect their nuclear infrastructure. No centrifuges will be allowed there, only research. And research probably would be on medical and the isotopes that are used for that. So that looks about what they agreed to, and it's a long list. Yes. And again, I have a list of what the P5+1 agreed to. And the essential thing is, of course, sanctions. You were right about that. The UN Security Council, a week and a half ago, voted to approve the Joint Comprehensive Program of Agreement, Program of Action. Why do I mess that up? And they have 90 days for it to come into effect. And the UN unanimously, Security Council approved that. And that's all pending a report by the IAEA. They're going to count on the IAEA.
And what does that organization stand for?
The International Atomic Energy Agency. Without dropping names, an acquaintance of mine was Director General of it previously. And I asked him a lot of questions about this. Can the IAEA detect whether they, in fact, enrich beyond 5% or 20%, or what they're enriching? He assured me, and he's a very honest guy, Maharid El-Baradei, that yes, they could. And the current Director General also makes that statement. What the P5-1 agreed to, and this was key to getting them to agree to the deal, essential for them, and that is the removal of the UN, EU, and all other sanctions pending the IAEA report, and there's a 6-month window for that. Some say it could be extended to 9 months. And they would unfreeze bank accounts that were frozen because of the violation of some of the UN agreements. There are other sanctions involved. We have sanctions on the Republican Guards. Those will stay in place. And other sanctions will stay in place about their export of missiles and their development of weapons. That essentially is what the P5 agreed to. I should mention that every member of the P5+1 have been to Tehran and are negotiating trade deals, and they look forward to those. Russia, in terms of their nuclear power facilities, which they provide. China, oil and natural gas, which they desperately need. Britain, France, Germany, thinking about machinery and other airplane parts. Very important for Iran. They have American aircraft, and they've had to use the black market to get parts, and it's very expensive. So that's essentially what they've gotten from this. They would say it's a win-win, right? And their main purpose, I'm very skeptical whether they ever wanted a nuclear weapon in the first place. But by having that out there, they could make this deal to get rid of the sanctions. They're smart. And the Americans did a good job in negotiating.
It's my understanding that there is a dispute resolution mechanism that's part of this agreement in the event that there's disagreements between the parties, specifically between the government of Iran and one or more of the governments of the P5+1 nations.
Yes.
Could you address what that mechanism is and whether you think that it's going to be effective if there is concerns that are raised by one party or the other in terms of how this agreement's being implemented?
Again, there's that 8-person, P5+1, plus Iran, plus the UN. They have, I think, a window of 21 days to talk about issues. Then I think before that 21 days is over, they discuss it, and if there is a dispute, a motion can be made, and if it has 5 of the 8 votes, that stands. The question is, and we don't expect Russia or China to be automatically on board. I think they might be, because Russia and China want this deal to come through. For them, it's dollars and cents.
We're going to take a break now, but when we return, we're going to explore with Nick Berry some of the criticisms that have been levied against this proposed agreement by its opponents.
Did you know 65% of home fire deaths occurred in homes without smoke alarms or without working smoke alarms? Hi, I'm Inspector Jacobelli of the Annapolis Fire Department, and we'd like to tell you about a smoke alarm program that we have for Annapolis citizens. If you cannot afford or you need assistance with any of the smoke alarms that you have, please call us at 410-263-7975 and we'll make an appointment with you right away. Also, here's some important points to remember when purchasing or maintaining your smoke alarms. Install an alarm in every bedroom, outside every sleeping area, on every level of your home, including the basement. If your smoke alarm is older than 10 years, it's time to replace it. You can find out how old the alarm is by looking at the manufacturing date on the back of the alarm. Replace the batteries in your smoke alarm every year and whenever you hear the alarm chirping, which indicates the battery is low. Make sure it has the label of an independent testing laboratory. Test your alarms every month by pressing the test button. Always follow the manufacturer's installation instructions that come with your alarm. They explain the do's and don'ts in placement and care. We recognize having smoke alarms in your home is vital. So please call us at 410-263-7975 if you have any questions or need any assistance with your smoke alarms. Thank you and be safe.
We're talking today with Nick Berry, the founder of the Foreign Policy Forum and a former senior analyst for the Center for Defense Information, speaking about the nuclear deal between the P5+1 nations and the government of Iran. There have been, Nick, quite a number of criticisms that have been levied against this accord by a series of opponents. And I'd like to, in turn, discuss each of them and let you react to them. The first criticism that's been made is that Iran will cheat.
Well, they've done it before, and so has just about every other country that's made international agreements. Think about it. Why would you engage in these long negotiations and make so many concessions if this is bogus? They get a lot out of it. It's important. I have a very good contact in Iran, and he tells me that the Iranians are delighted with this. It is portrayed by the government there and the media, which is somewhat controlled, as a huge win for the Iranians. A big victory, and they got what they wanted. Why in heaven's name would they say, oh no, sorry, we were wrong? No, this is in their interest to do that. Plus the fact that this is going to remove a threat by the Israelis. The Israelis now have no option about attacking, none whatsoever. As long as the IAEA and the P5+1 see the compliance with the agreement both ways, it's done. So I think it makes no sense that they are just a bunch of irrational people. They're very irrational, very rational rather, and they get the benefits. Why risk those? Yeah.
Well, the opponents would respond to that by saying, yes, but of course Iran has got a record in this, and that if there is cheating, the inspectors will not be able to detect this fast enough in order to make a difference. And that we were promised by the administration that there would be inspections anywhere, anytime, and that they basically backed away from that. But that there's not going to be enough time for the United States and the other countries to really do much if Iran does indeed engage in cheating.
Good, yes, and that, of course, is one of the big points by the critics of this. From what I understand, and I followed this intensely, is that the IAEA are very confident that if they use any nuclear material in a clandestine site, and by the way, it's extremely hard to hide that, we can detect sites that have nuclear material. The IAEA can do that. That means it's possible that they can develop secret sites. But to do that, no nuclear material, and it has to be very, very minor. They can't have a large-scale operation there. The IAEA is all over the place in Iran, and there are a whole bunch of sites that are totally available for inspections 24/7. And that includes all the known Natanz, Fordo, and so forth that exist now. New ones, they can petition and go there. And they eventually will. And I'm assured, and the government's assured, that they can't hide any nuclear material experimentation research.
Okay. The critics also make the point that Iran gets to keep its entire nuclear infrastructure as part of this agreement.
Well, of course, you need it because they want to develop nuclear energy. The criticism is, why would they want to develop nuclear energy when they have so much oil? Perhaps the critics should be reminded that the world's leading producer and exporter of oil was the first to develop nuclear power for electricity. And that, of course, was basically in the Eisenhower era in the 1950s. And we were the pioneers in this. Why waste your most precious natural resource when you can have reliable, cheap, non-polluting sources of electricity? It makes sense.
Okay. Opponents also say that the deal is only good for 10 to 15 years, and after that, Iran can break out and develop a nuclear weapon.
It raises all kinds of questions. What would be their motive? That would end their... Now, the snapback sanctions would still be in effect. So they want the regime to suffer sanctions again? Doesn't make much sense. They will not be under a threat by anyone. There's no reason for them to develop. By the way, developing a nuclear weapon is not cheap. Iran's economy is really suffering. And the one figure is they need $500 billion to get their oil infrastructure back in proper shape. They're going to say no to that? I doubt it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the critics also say that the money that Iran receives from the lifting of sanctions is so great that it will enable the regime to engage in greater mischief in the Middle East, including the sponsorship of terrorism.
Their connection with Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Gaza Strip will not end. They've been fairly modest in supporting them financially. They do provide weapons to Hezbollah, no question about that. And Hezbollah is an ally in the Syrian civil war. We could get into that, but that's a long debate. The estimate is that of the maximum $100 billion, $50 billion of that is already obligated to pay off creditors, to restore certain social services at home, leaving $50 billion. But of that, because getting rid of the sanctions is prime for them, they've got to get their oil industry back. That is a drop in the bucket in restoring their oil industry. They're not going to have much left over for mischief. It is true, though, that they are in a competitive environment with their Shia, with the Sunnis, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, and that will probably continue.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the critics also say that the P5+1 nations could have gotten a better deal and can still get a better deal if Congress votes down this agreement and possibly applies additional sanctions as well. And that'll force the Iranian regime to give in some more.
Mike, do you think our partners in the P5+1 will go through this again, and Iran will go through this again? That is ridiculous. This is an agreement that's been made, agreed to under international law. We're obliged to carry it out. It is true that the Congress has that 60-day window to turn it down. And if they do, don't you think the other members of the P5+1 will continue with the deal and get access to Iran? And Iran will complete the deal and also to get their sanctions removed? Only the United States would keep sanctions on. And that'd be a minor, it'd leak like a sieve, because you have Russia, China, Germany, France, and England, right, without sanctions on them. A better deal. This was a difficult, think how long these negotiations happened. They've been off and on for 2 years. No one wants to begin this again, except maybe the Republicans in the Congress. It just won't happen.
Well, you know, opponents also say that, you know, if necessary, a military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities will be easy, quick, and effective. And we always have that threat holding over Iran that we can impose upon them and to use, if necessary, to eliminate the threat. And we don't have to sign into a bad deal if we have the military option at our command? What would you say to them?
The Pentagon is a big player in this, and they've been advising the White House. Beginning in 2002, they war-gamed a war, this kind of war, to quote, the surgical strike to take out their Iran's nuclear capability. They found it was horrendous. Their war game said we would lose probably an aircraft carrier, 3 or 4 other ships. The Iranians have a very good anti-ship capability with swarms of torpedo boats and missiles. Their missiles are very good. And also, we don't have the capability to invade. Once we attack them, it's for certain that they're then going to develop nuclear weapons in the underground protected sites. What is going to stop this war? The Pentagon regained or redid the war game a number of times since then, including just a few years ago. They don't know how to end it. Plus the fact that Iran is not Afghanistan and Iraq. It's a much bigger country with a bigger population and a much stronger military capability. And it has nationalism, strong nationalism. Unlike Afghanistan and Iraq, which were divided, as we know, Iran isn't. It would unify behind the hardliners. That is the path to a nuclear weapon, and it's a path to another disastrous war.
Mm-hmm. President Obama said that there's no alternative to this agreement. Would you agree with him on that?
Yes. What is it? There's none.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, please jot down the information that's on your screen. You can reach us at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov, or check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on City Government, Boards and Commissions, and then down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."